You guys ask me a lot of different questions, and for the first time, I'm going to try and answer some of them on Coffee and Trains. Welcome everybody to another edition of Coffee and Trains. Before we begin, I'm drinking some 8 o'clock coffee, and as always, I take it black with 2 sugars. So today I wanted to begin doing some Q&A with you guys because you guys do ask me a ton of questions, whether it's comments, whether it's reaching out on Facebook or all that kind of stuff, and it's really a lot, and I want to try to start going through some of these. Now, to begin this whole thing, I wanted to take questions from my patrons and answer those first. So we're going to go ahead and start that off with Mark Arnold. Mark Arnold says, "Hey Jimmy, are you modeling the scale you want because of the space that you're happy with, or would you like more space and a bigger scale?" So that's a bit of a complicated question for me because when I did hop back in the hobby, I also started in HO scale, not N scale. Now, I had been in N scale when I was a kid, but I really wanted to do HO scale because of just the size factor and working with it like that. What ended up putting me back to N scale was I realized that I like large, expansive scenery, and you get more of that with your space with N scale. So it's not necessarily would I be happier in a bigger scale. I think I would just be happy with a model railroad so long as it had some bigger, more expansive scenery. And for the vast majority of spaces that I had available to me, it would be N scale. So that is really what drove that right there. And he also had another question that I wanted to answer, and he said, "What's the best policy for layout, detail, and setting? Is it close up, right into the layout, or viewed from afar to have that overall sense and spirit?" And I think this really depends on scale. The larger scale you get, the more you need to look at detail. So when you're getting into HO scale versus N scale, you're going to have more detail. With N scale, I know at least in my detailing, I do try to detail, but at the same time, I go for more of the feel than when I used to do HO scale. I'd be going for more specific detail just because it is smaller and it is hard to deal with. So just getting that look and feel right is going to get the illusion correct. Because remember, you're doing kind of an illusion of reality. You're doing a lot of spatial compression and things like that. So when you do this, you're going to be, it just depends on your scale. Obviously, when you get to bigger scales, like if you're doing realistic O scale and things like that, you're definitely going to be doing some detail on that. But overall, that is what I would say about doing detail. Now, let's go ahead and get into question number 3 from Lynn McCurdy. He says, "We know you just started a new layout, but if you were to start all over, meaning from the beginning with maybe a bit more room with the knowledge you have now, what would you do differently?" Well, I think the first thing is I've always wanted a double-decker layout, and I still might attempt this in this room, but I think having a double-decker layout with a helix is something that I would like to try. I think I would like to have larger industries, 1 or 2 big like focal point industries, like maybe a big steel mill, coal mine, things like that, rather than the space compressed industries that I'm going to be doing. Doing some of those really huge industries, maybe a huge yard. I think having a big staging area as well where trains can run. So I would like to have the option for continuous running where trains completely disappear, and also be able to do some switching, kind of that. I think I would build it where I had a big yard in the middle, and then I had 2 very scenic areas going off, maybe dual peninsulas, and have big industries on, have maybe split it and do a big industry on each side, then do a bunch of small industries on the other with a town. That's probably what I would end up doing. And yeah, so let's go on to the next question, which is from Catawba Jim. He says, "How do you determine when to sacrifice space for detail or vice versa?" Now, this is actually going to be kind of timely because I'm actually getting ready to start doing, you can see right here, this little spot right here, which is only about, I would say 4 or 5 inches wide, and I'm going to make it into an industry. So When I'm talking about sacrificing for space versus detail, I think it's really, you have to look at what you're focusing on. So I think you can sacrifice space when you're talking about certain industries, or if you want to leave some of it up to the imagination, which is what I'm going to be doing with that one right there. So it's really just a matter of, is the detail you're going to be getting going to be enough to convey what is going on there? So if you have a warehouse or a massive distribution center that you have boxcars pulling up to, and you're only modeling the dock where the boxcars are pulling up to, is that going to be enough to convey that this is a massive retail distribution warehouse or something like that? You know, because a lot of times you put those on the back of the layout and you just do the fronts of the buildings or things like that. So it's really a balance of being able to convey what it is, and how much space you're going to need to tell the story of what it is. So thank you, Catawba Jim, for that question. Let's go ahead and move on to question number 5, and it's from Chuck Hedler. He's got a couple of them right here. He says, when and why did you pick the railroad that you model? So mine it was a bit more proto-lance. It's definitely more freelance now. I'm kind of naming things as I go, but I model the Appalachian foothills and mountains and things like that, which is big. Norfolk Southern and CSX country. I'm modeling the Norfolk Southern side of it because I grew up with Norfolk Southern. That's the reason why I'm picking the railroad that I model. That I'm really taking my inspiration from the areas around Asheville and Western North Carolina and things like that. If you've ever watched the NS Modeler 24, him and his dad's layout models the old Fort Loops, which is probably less than 2 hours from where I am right now. And it's one of the coolest places when it was still going. But sometimes even in the winter, you can see it from the interstate from I-40. But that is why I model the railroad, because it's the one that's around me, and I really think it's really, really pretty. I think if I lived out west, I would definitely be doing UP or BNSF. I really love Rocky Mountain Railroad scenery. I think it's some of the prettiest scenery for railroads. I've actually ridden the California Zephyr through the Rockies, and it was absolutely fantastic. So, and I've actually got a video on that. It's a very old video, but I'll put a link up here. Completely forgot that was completely unintentional, but I'll put a link up here as well as at the end of the video of my time on the California Zephyr through the Rockies. And Chuck actually had 2 questions. And he said, if you had more space and money, would you model it in a different scale, and why? And honestly, that's kind of what Mark asked me, but it's a little bit different. If I had more money and not more space, I would definitely stick with in scale, and probably I would be able to throw more money at rolling stock and more locomotives and things like that. Because once you get your scenery in place, your scenery's in place, and then you're just going to end up spending money on more rolling stock and locomotives. If I had more space, I probably would be in the HO scale camp. And by more space, I mean a lot more space. I mean, if I had a basement, I would definitely be in the HO scale camp. But at the same time, it's kind of like I can get more railroad perfect with in scale. So it's a really tough question to answer. And I think a lot of people ask that question. And so I hope that answered your question, Chuck. I kind of was a little bit wishy-washy on that. So, well, I want to thank my patrons for sending those in. And I want to talk about how this is going to go in the future, because I do want to keep doing these Q&As. You guys ask a lot of great questions that actually a lot of you ask very similar questions, and I want to be able to bring them up and answer them so I can answer them directly here. So from now on, the questions that I will answer are going to be coming from the comment sections of these videos. So if you have a question that you want answered, I'm going to try to do these once a month. You can put it in the comments below. So go ahead and put those questions in there. I do want to say thank you to my patrons, not only the ones that I mentioned here, but all of them. They're listed right here. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. A lot of cool stuff going on over there, including Model of the Month for 3D printers at the $5 a month level. Just had one released yesterday if you're watching this video the day it came out. One of my favorite ones I've ever done. I did a little concrete batch plant. So a lot of cool stuff going on over there. I'm going to link a couple of those videos that I talked about during this at the end, so be sure to check those out. But right now, let's talk about some of those coffees that you guys are drinking. Pat Leclerc says that he's drinking Tim's Dark Roast with double milk. 2 milk. I'm assuming that's what that means. Sounds delicious. I just finished a whole big thing of Tim Hortons. So let's see here. Death by Fishing. I haven't heard from you in a while. You're a long-time subscriber. It says that he is drinking Folgers with 2 creams. That sounds absolutely delicious. So, and last but not least, Wicked Seafood says that he is drinking Folgers Black Silk with a splash of Italian sweet cream. A lot of Folgers drinkers right here. And so if you want to check out some of those videos, I've got some cool videos linked right after this, so you can check those out. I do want to say thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading.